Hi everyone. This is attempt number 2 to my very first vlog because the last time I recorded the entire thing and forgot to use the microphone, which I heard was kind of common, so it made me feel a little better, but still. So this is attempt number 2. Thank you so much for being here. Seriously, this is a kind of a vulnerable place for me to be in, but it's also a passion project and something that I really have been feeling called to, so here we are. The topic of this vlog, the first vlog, is empathy, which I feel is something really important to speak about during a pandemic, but also like just to have in conversation in general. I really believe that it connects human connection, interpersonal connection, and we can always use a little bit more of that, I think, in my opinion. So I am going to show you my nifty skills for sharing the screen and, just kind of what I'm going to do to keep us on track through this vlog video. So here we go. This is basically the rundown. This is everything I'm going to talk about. What is empathy? The difference between empathy and sympathy. Those usually get mixed up. Patterns through generations. That also includes some theories. The empathy and narcissism spectrum, which I think is really an interesting topic. Also, are we born with it or do we believe it? Also another interesting one that I really enjoyed researching. Why is empathy important? Why are we even talking about it? Relating it to the current pandemic, the coronavirus, and last but not least, giving you tools and some areas to bring awareness to in your life. So here we go. If you see me looking down just for a bit, it's because I'm reading off my handy dandy mumbo jumbo notepad. It used to be a sketchbook, but now it's where I put all of my notes and research. Also, there is a blog connected to this vlog, which is going over the same information. That information is taken from credible sources like the CDC and psychologytoday.com. All of those sources will be listed at the bottom of the blog if you want to further research anything, just so you know. Okay, here we go. What is empathy? So the dictionary definition of empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. I want to just side note a little bit about the understanding part. I feel like sometimes we can't understand exactly what someone is feeling or what it feels like to be in a situation if we've never experienced that situation. We can perceive those feelings and feel those feelings in our own way, but they may not be exactly what that other person is feeling. I just thought it was something important to bring up, that we probably just shouldn't pretend to understand or say that we understand if we don't really understand, what they're going through, what they're feeling, how it could possibly feel to live in whatever experience they're experiencing at that time. So instead, I offer that we just remember to just be a strong, brick wall for that person at that time. If they need something to lean on, you just be that person. You could feel those feelings too, but I feel a lot of the time it's so easy. People can easily just say, oh, I understand, but do you really? So instead, just kind of offering your support in that aspect. Okay, already on to number 2. What the difference is between empathy and sympathy. These easily get confused. Empathy Well, actually, I'll start with sympathy. Sympathy is feeling sorry for someone's misfortune. And empathy is acknowledging what another person is feeling. So I think that's kind of why they call them sympathy cards, the cards that you give when you go to someone's wake or funeral. Um, you're not necessarily feeling the same emotions that that person is feeling, but instead you know, you're acknowledging that they're going through a tough time and just, say sorry. That's usually what happens, at least for me, at wakes and funerals. Um, where empathy is more like you are really, really like feeling what that person is going through. So, for example, say we're going to get dark just for a second because for some reason my examples are dark, but like say you lose someone in your family and then your friend or, someone else who loses that same person for them in their life a year later. I could imagine, going back into my memory and feeling what those emotions were that I was feeling and, being able to connect that to what this person could be feeling at this time and like really just like kind of like knowing like what they're feeling and acknowledging that and my computer just did something weird. I'm just double checking, making sure everything's gonna go okay. I will lose my mind if I have to go to attempt number 3 for this vlog, but I will do whatever it takes. It'll be attempt number 50 and I'll still be here, guys, okay? Okay, so yeah. They're different. One is basically like I'm sorry and the other is like really feeling those emotions like that, like, what that person is feeling. Okay. Number 3, patterns through generations. I really like this section. It was so interesting to me because I got to learn about a generation that I actually didn't have any knowledge about. And that is the generation called the iGens. They're people born from 1995 to 2012, so they are 8 years old to 24 years old right now. And not supposedly, through research I have found that this generation in particular is more inclusive, less entitled, and less narcissistic than the generations that have come before them. Where typically if you regularly have a discussion about generations, the older generations now are going to say that, oh, those younger kids, they lack empathy or, interpersonal connection and all those things. But really, research shows us the opposite, where they're becoming more empathetic and are able to connect more to the people around them and different people around them. These are the kids who grew up with, iPhones and technology, which I think is a really cool way to grow up because they're growing up in a more diverse environment, just like their online environment. So like say maybe the environment in person in their town isn't that diverse, but online, their followers, their friends through social media, they could have so many different religions and ethnicities and socioeconomic statuses, and so they grew up in a time where there was more diversity and therefore there's more inclusiveness and empathy. So it's really something cool to see. Who I Oh, that's a different part. Never mind. But yeah, so really cool aspect to the iGens. I have another level of respect for them now, I think. Not that I didn't respect them, but I just look at them like they're cool. And iGens is a cool name. Okay, so this is where the theories come in. I'm going to try really hard not to make it boring. First theory is called the dynamic integration theory. It has to do with your cognitive affective complexity. So, how do you explain that? Basically, it has to do with your awareness of your feelings and then you connecting your cognitive brain to the emotions that you're feeling. So, that happens, that increases during adolescence to middle adulthood. So, when I connect it to like our society now, I just think of like, I think of Greta Thunberg, the environmental activist who's a, teenager from Sweden, I'm pretty sure. And I think that she really just acts in such a strong way and is so passionate about the environment because she is, connecting her feelings and her cognitive brain to the emotions that she's feeling about the animals that are endangered and going extinct in the ocean, for the birds that are dying from plastic in their stomachs, from, the whales and the seals, the icebergs are melting, and like, so all of these species are feeling pain and fear and death. They're facing death ultimately. So I really feel that she can connect emotionally to what that is and what that means for us and for those species, and bring that into action. So for me, she's like a symbol of empathy in a young person in our society right now. Interesting aspect of this theory, it said that middle adulthood to like later adulthood, it plateaus and then decreases. So I don't know. That kind of is the opposite of what this next theory is going to say in some aspects. So really what you can take from this is that there is not really enough research done on this topic. So, take it with a grain of salt, I guess. The second theory is the socio-emotional selectivity theory. It has to do with endings approaching. And with like, so the way that my brain thinks of it, for some reason, the ending is death. I don't know why I have to get so dark, naturally. But, so, the ending that is approaching for all of us is death. The closer you get to that, typically is when you're older in age. So then it's saying that, your empathy increases with the importance of interpersonal relationships and close relationships, like as you get older. So like as the end approaches, relationships get more important, empathy increases. The ending that is approaching doesn't have to be death. It can be something else. So I'll give you an example. I'm not too sure that many people can relate, but say in a Boy Scout or Girl Scout situation, you go camping for 5 days, or you do a leadership workshop or something to that sort for 5 days. You spend all of this intimate or closely knit time together with these people for 5 days, and then as the ending approaches, say it's the last day, You really feel emotionally connected to these people. You can empathize easier with them now that you've spent all that time together, and you know that, the ending is near. We're not going to be able to have another experience like this maybe ever again. I mean, a lunch date really isn't the same experience. So I think that's a really cool aspect brought in from this theory, the idea of an ending approaching and empathy increasing. All right. I'm just going to bring you back to the other screen to show you what we've already done. What is empathy? Empathy and sympathy, the generations, and that's where the theories were. So number 4, the empathy narcissism spectrum. I'm actually going to bring it up for you. I'm just going to go right into it with this image because I really, really like this. As you can see, this is a bell curve, which means it's shaped like a bell. We can all see that. Where it says low and high, the red area and the yellow area, I would like to have the red area represent empathy and the yellow area represent narcissism. And those are extremes. The middle is like the average. That's where most people lie. And then some people lie as like an extreme empath, and other people lie as in like the extreme narcissism area. So I am going to backtrack and then possibly use that again. So narcissism is the opposite of empathy. That might help before I go into that beautiful bell curve that I'm so excited about. So narcissism is, it's like thinking about yourself. So an extreme representation of that may be that someone thinks that they are superior to everyone around them is inferior, their words are inferior, so they don't really take anything that anyone else says seriously or like it has value. So that's kind of what that looks like. An extreme empath is feels a lot, is very caring, can be overwhelmed by crowded areas, can experience sensory overload if there's too much going on in an environment. That's basically it. I'll give you a little example. So I think that I was experiencing, I think that, being able to feel what other people are feeling and take in like those emotions and connect them to your own is a really cool skill to have and be aware of. But that's the important part. Be aware of it. Because if you're not aware of it, you could be taking in a lot that isn't really yours to deal with. That's where barriers come in, and I will have another vlog about barriers. But so I worked in a nursing home for 8 months. The entire last month that I worked there, I had a fever of 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And the day that I left, the fever left too. And I'm convinced that this is because I wasn't putting a barrier up, and I was like just like so feeling what the patients were going through, what the families of the patients were going through, what the care providers were going through in that environment, that it was physically affecting my body. And, that can happen if you're not really balanced, if you're not really in the average area of the curve, which most people are, going back to this fabulous bell curve. The orange area is where most people in society lie. I think it's super important to have a balance between narcissism and empathy. Again, bringing in the narcissism, like you're the star of your life. You are the protagonist. You are number one, center stage. but you're not the only actor in like your life movie. There are, you know, your family members, your friends, your colleagues. Those are all like supporting roles, and, you know, like all these other actors and things that are going through life. And it's important to think about them, and acknowledge their existence and their life and their life movies that they're, you know, the lead role in. So that's why a balance is important, so you can connect to other people, which is you know, really important. I'm just pulling up, here we are. Okay, so yeah, the empathy narcissism spectrum is like my jam. I'm a total nerd about it. Okay, hopefully you are too. Number 5, are we born with it or do we learn it or do we build it? Okay, so did some research about this. I actually really liked what I found. It supports my belief that nurture and nature are always kind of working together, and both have an effect on how things turn out. So I'm just going to read a quote, actually. These aren't my words, but they're quoted from one of the sources. It says that empathy is a learned behavior, even though the capacity for it is inborn. So basically what that's saying is that when we're born, in our DNA, we have the ability to grow and form the skill of empathy, but it is a learned behavior from our life and our life experiences from around us. So with that being said, obviously, since we all don't have the same uprising or upbringing, childhood, whatever you want to call it, we're obviously not going to fall on the empathy narcissism spectrum in exactly the same place. We are all not going to be able to build the same amount of empathy. It's not going to look the same for everyone. And that's like everything in life. Like, if you're still thinking that if it's going to look the same as someone else, like, throw that out the door. Everything looks different for everyone. But I like that. I think that's really cool. And another aspect that ties into that, that supports that, is that the extent of your own emotional intelligence will make it harder or easier for you to develop empathy. So, emotional intelligence, I'm going to give you a little of my own definition there. That's basically you being aware of your emotions, how you feel them, why you're feeling them, how to like kind of release that. How to express them properly or in a safe way. All of that has to do with your emotional intelligence. Basically being in touch and aware of your own emotional body. So that makes it easier or harder for you to build empathy, which ties into one of the tools or places to be aware of that I'm going to tell you later, but I'll give you a little scoop right now. It's like a mindful practice. So just simply being more aware of you and what you're feeling can allow you to be more aware and in touch and be able to connect to what other people are feeling and going through. So it's like really cool. Okay. I'm going to backtrack just for a second. back to the empathy and narcissism spectrum, because I feel like this is a really important aspect of it. So narcissism is a masculine trait and empathy is a feminine trait. I know when we use those words, masculine and feminine, people think that like it has to do with gender, but it actually doesn't. Everyone should have a balance of masculine and feminine traits. Just like the yin yang, the yin yang, the circle with the white and the black, it's equally dark and equally light, equally masculine, equally feminine, equally empathetic, equally narcissistic. Balance. That's what we're talking about. So hopefully that picture in your brain can help with the point I'm trying to get across, in which that is balance in these traits. Okay. Why is this important? Why are you sitting here watching this video? Why did I take all the time to research this? Why am I sitting in front of this camera for the second time saying the same thing? Why? And it all, for me, it comes down to relationship management. That sounds like a bland term, but really, like, that's what it is. Having empathy and practicing using it and being empathetic allows you to have interpersonal connections. Which is like, it's really important. I actually wrote down here that, like, if we don't have relationships, and we don't connect with other people, I really feel that is it's the result. The results are loneliness, war, anger, murder, rape, all of these, like, terrible, really just like you feel it in your throat things that we see in our society. That's just a result of people not being able to connect to other people. So that's why this is important. Because if we practice this and we teach the younger generations this, and we can actually use it in an effective way, along with the other tools that I am going to mention to you, maybe we won't see that much of that. You know, maybe like racism will decrease. Finally, like maybe we won't see as many murders. Maybe we won't have such bad, connections to people who live in other countries. Just, trying to take an individual approach to make a better world. And I think that empathy is one step toward that. And we're all capable. It may be on different levels, but we are all capable of learning this behavior and practicing it and strengthening it. All right. Sorry, I need to sit comfortably. All right, so we're almost there. I want to relate it to the coronavirus pandemic. Again, a little dark. But it's where we are right now. There is a lot of hope, and there is a lot of connection and empathy I am feeling during this time. I just wanted to bring up an aspect of it, which is your exposure to what's going on will probably have something to do with your empathy practice toward whatever is going on. So I'll give you an example. So say that you're experiencing sensory overload from watching the news all day, every day, from being on the social media and all that, and you're just like, I can't do this anymore. This is too much. So then you don't go on your phone. You're in quarantine. You're hanging out in your house. Now you get to binge watch Netflix. You can do your homework. You can do some baking. You can, paint that painting that that you always wanted to paint, but you never got the chance. And all of a sudden you start to forget about what's going on in the world around you. And so I would call that like no exposure to what's really going on. You just separated yourself from it, and that could be considered a barrier. But that's also you're not really experiencing empathy because you're not really connecting to other people in that time. So say you're like, okay, I'm kind of lonely here. Like, I want to go and see what's going on in the world. So you go back on social media, and now you're reading all of these stories that healthcare providers are sharing about having to go into work scared, not having enough PPE or masks to finish out a shift or anything like that. And you start to imagine yourself kind of in their shoes, which is another way to look at empathy, putting yourself in someone else's shoes. So you start to imagine what that must feel like, and maybe you get tears in your eyes. Maybe you're like, oh my God, I need help. I need to do something for these people. I couldn't imagine. So that is, you're more exposed, so now you're starting to experience empathy. You're starting to really hear about what is going on. So next, the next level of exposure, I would say, is being a healthcare provider or anyone who is essential in that kind of environment. So what I imagine is a nurse in a hospital taking care of patients who tested positive for coronavirus, and their family members aren't allowed in. They don't know if they will recover, and the nurse is the only person who they have to connect to. And that nurse, knowing that that is the situation and having to show up in a way of support for their patients in emotional needs and in physical needs. And that is a whole other level of empathy that I cannot explain to you, because I cannot fathom what what that must be like. I don't understand that situation. I've never been in something like that. So I can't even relate. But I'm just showing you your level of exposure could tie into your level of empathy. Yeah. Okay. And I think a lot of the sidebar things that people are doing, like making masks and donating food and supplies to hospitals and care providers, those are actions and results of feeling empathy. So beautiful things do come out of feeling what other people are feeling. The last thing, tools and areas to be aware of. This is the gold. I'm going to try to deliver in like the next 5 minutes. Okay, so, I made a list for you too. I'm going to leave it up at the end of the video if you want to take a screenshot or save it. I'll go in order. So the first thing that I recommend for all of us to bring awareness to and practice is thinking about others. Like I said before, we are the main characters of our movie, our life movie, but there are other people around, and some of those people, a lot of those people for me are like incredibly important. And my life would not really be, anything without them. So this moves into the next one. How you can connect to these important supporting role people in your life is effective listening. So it's easy to say that we listen when someone speaks to us, but effective listening is pretty different, and it actually is difficult sometimes. So I would say effective listening is fully giving your full attention to someone when they're speaking to you. Body language, your shoulders are toward them, you're leaning in, eye contact, and also it has to do with not trying to find a solution for them, and not even really giving your 2 cents if you don't really have to. Just literally sitting there with your mouth closed and listening to the words coming out of their mouth. You will learn so much in doing this, about yourself and about that other person who you're having this conversation with. Another cool thing that you can do when you're having a conversation with someone is to clarify and kind of re-say what they had just said, just so you make sure that you guys are on the same page and you are understanding what they're saying. That's super important, and it's just another aspect of effective listening. Number 3 on these fabulous tools and bullet points, get rid of your assumptions. This is a hard thing to do. For some people, like myself, because I assume everything, and I'm a big thinker. I think a lot. So when something happens and say somebody doesn't answer a message that I sent or something, that I have 12 different assumptions pop up in my head, and it's usually, oh, this person, doesn't like what I'm doing or any of this. Get rid of that. And I'm working on it too. Just get rid of that. How we get rid of that in action is having conversations and getting uncomfortable. Nobody likes doing that. But it's something that we have to do to grow and build the relationships in our lives. So what I recommend is that when you start to see the assumptions come up in your head, to cut them off. Literally just be shing, not interested, and directly reach out to the person in which this assumption is about. And have a conversation. Practice your effective listening while having this conversation. Practice being in, picturing yourself in someone else's shoes during this conversation. And, practice, being genuine, opening your heart, just being a real person while in conversation with this person. And I promise that your assumptions, I'm 95% promise that these assumptions are not going to be true. They're just going to be made up fragments in your brain that wanted to haunt you for no reason. So yeah, have conversations and get uncomfortable. That's a huge thing that we can all practice. I've been doing that for the past month and a half, I would say, and I have experienced great things. Okay, 2 more. Limit your time on social media. I only say this because if you spend too much time on social media and all you're seeing are these really bad or really depressing or upsetting or just real experiences or stories online, you could just become numb to them, honestly. It's like overexposure, and you're gonna turn off your empathy muscle with that. So just, you know, take some time away from your phone. I actually was shown the thing on my phone that shows you how many hours you are averaging per day of screen time, and it like blew my mind. It was a major wake up call for me, especially I'm sure it really like increased from being in quarantine, but let's step away. Let's step away, reconnect to ourselves, reflect in ourselves, and then go back so we can connect to other people. Okay, last one. Try building a mindful practice. I have also been practicing this for the last 2 months, and it has actually really been a great experience. It was hard at the beginning, obviously, because you're starting something new, and that's always the hardest part. But I really do feel like it does tie in to, like I said before, being aware of what you're feeling and why, and then watching what that does when you talk to other people, in certain relationships, how it guides you in relating to other people. So it's like, you know, just some advice that you might want to try. There's really great guided meditations on YouTube that are like 10 minutes long, and they feel like, you know, a split second because they're so nice and calming and comforting. So I would recommend that. And Yoga with Adrienne on YouTube is also a really great source for like a calm moving practice if you don't want to sit still in meditation. Yeah, so that's what I recommend. Thank you guys so much for being here with me for my first vlog on such an important topic. I hope you learned something. If you did send me your email address to take the survey for after this, I will send it on over. Here is the list of tools and things that we can be aware of if you just want to take a screenshot or save that somewhere on your computer. But yeah, that's it. I really hope you learned something. Thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy, and if you have any other questions, just reach out to me. Bye. Love ya.